everybody. Welcome to Corrections for the week of Monday, July 19th. We have changed the title card now to just say Corrections. I don't know why we ran from that for so long, but that is the safest way to be error-free to start us off. I mentioned last week that this was Emmy-nominated. This is an Emmy-nominated piece, and I thank the Academy, and a lot of you said, hey, the Academy is the Oscars. It actually, I was right in this case. There is a television academy. It's actually fully called the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, but scientists asked us to not say the sciences anymore. Very few sciences. I guess like probably on CSI they have one. I was talking about feeding chickens, how a farmer would feed chickens, and I said they would feed them chicken seed. It's chicken feed. You feed a chicken, chicken feed. And I just wish there was a way to remember that. Like a mnemonic device that I wouldn't make that mistake again. I referenced the film Speed and said that the bus in that film would explode if it went under 55 miles per hour. It was 50 miles per hour, which makes sense because 55 would be unreasonable. You would say, this movie is unbelievable. So my apologies to Dennis Hopper's character, Howard Payne, who kept it a reasonable 50 miles per hour. Do you know how much money he wanted? To the ransom he had for the bus? Guess, Shoemaker. How much money Dennis Hopper's character wanted in Speed? What? 3.7 million. I thought you'd think it was more. Count on Shoemaker and just get burned. We talked about Björk, and I mentioned that I got it wrong because the J is silent. Everybody said it's not silent, it just sounds like a Y, and you were correct. The J in Björk sounds like a Y, which is helpful because if any of you ever go to Reykjavik, you will be known as Jackals. We talked about they're bringing back the Microsoft Office assistant Clippy as an emoji. We told a joke about that. One person reached out to say, Clippy is just the nickname. The character is actually called Clippit. And I looked it up, and that is true. Though, if you ever find yourself taking the time to point something like that out again, I would advise you to clip it. Hey, this was not covered much in the news this week. This was sort of one of those buried headlines, but Jeff Bezos went to space. The way, he went to space the way, someone in Long Island City went to Manhattan. But we said that Bezos looks like Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. Bezos looks like Data playing a sheriff on the holodeck. And someone reached out, and I would like to read what they wrote. Sorry to correct you, but Star Trek's Data never played a sheriff on the holodeck. An accident led to characters in a holodeck program taking on the appearance and physical attributes of Data. Even then, none of the characters were the sheriff. The image you're using in this episode is a character called Eli Hollander, who just looks like Data. The sheriff in this holodeck program was Worf. Good effort, though. And I went and checked, and every part of what this person said is true. There's one thing that I feel is not true, which is it starts, sorry to correct you, and I don't believe that person was sorry. I went day drinking with Lord this week. This is a correction for all of you, so brace yourself if you like dishing it out but not taking it. One of the things we did at the end of Day Drinking with Lord is we both tried to recreate the art of her album Melodrama. Here's something we posted online because we wanted to let everybody vote. So there's the actual painting. There's my excellent attempt, and there's Lord's bad attempt. And Yet I went to the poll because we have a week-long poll, and this is currently where we're at. Obviously, you see Lorde is winning. Now, I think I know what happened here, which is a lot of people are huge fans of Lorde's music, which I am too, a giant fan. Yet some of you are irrational fans who then are elevating her lesser talents, like painting. And I also think what happened is maybe a lot of Lorde fans watched Day Drinking who are not always necessarily watching this show. So now I'm guessing a lot of the Lorde fans aren't here for corrections. So this is my chance to talk to you guys and say it's not too late. We can't let this stand. Oh, we talked about Lindsey Graham, how Lindsey Graham is often very servile and sort of obsequious about Donald Trump. And I did an impression of Lindsey Graham saying that he hit a 600-foot drive. And a lot of you pointed out, well, that's only like a 200-yard drive. That's not that impressive. And yes, that's true. But I also think that while you know that, I don't think Trump knows that. And I think that if he hit a 200-yard drive, Lindsey Graham would think, I'm going to tell him it's a 600-foot drive, because he'll think that's better. You know, and then he goes back, you know, the golf game's over. He's like, Lindsey, tell him about the putt. Tell him about the putt. And he's like, 50 millimeters. Got to read a lot of breaks at 50 millimeters. I mentioned that last week during corrections. I mentioned that the previous Monday was the 20-year anniversary of myself and Amy Poehler auditioning for SNL. And a lot of you said I should have said Monday was the 20th anniversary of Amy Poehler and I auditioning for SNL. And then I asked Amy what she thought, and she said the correct way would be to say Monday was the 20th anniversary of Amy Poehler auditioning for SNL and just leave me out of it completely. We talked about shark teeth and how there's crystal meth in the ocean now, and that fish can get addicted to crystal meth, and as we all agreed, sharks are fish. And we showed a picture of a great white with no teeth because, you know, it's addicted to crystal meth. And many of you pointed out the problem there is sharks' teeth regenerate. So even a shark on crystal meth that lost its teeth the teeth would come back right away. So this is just, if you know a shark who's trying to tell you he's clean, and he's like, look. If I was still on crystal, would I have these chompers? Just know, might be. Somebody wrote last week, making a correction, and addressed it to the intern who Seth has read these comments. I don't make an intern can you imagine making another that would be like making someone watch the videotape from The Ring. Like, sure, it'd make my life better, but I would never forgive myself. Oh, we talked about how we had this appendectomy graphic. Let's put it up real quick. And people jumped in, and we addressed this last week, that's not where an appendectomy incision would be. And then a bunch of you pointed out, also, why are you driving the wrong way in the drive-thru? And so I took this down to graphics, you know, because obviously now, you know, two mistakes in the same, you know, and I'm just laying into them. I'm like, you're making me look bad. And then I realize why they do it. Like, they get off on getting yelled at. Because I'm like, 1, the incision's wrong. At 2, you're going the wrong way. And they're like, were we bad? So now we got to keep an eye on these guys. Like, oh, did we mess up? We used to do this thing when we had everyone here called $5 Fridays, which was we all wrote our name on a $5 bill. We'd put it in one of those spinny lottery ball things. If there's a word, do let me know. And we talked about it because we had Henry Winkler on this weekend, and when Henry Winkler was back here in normal times, he saw this, and the great Henry Winkler said, "Oh, can I play?" And we said, "Sure." And so we wrote his name on it, and sure enough, of, whatever, the $50, $65, Henry Winkler wins, which means he gets all the money. But Henry Winkler's a great guy, so he bought us all pizza. Anyway, he's here this week. We bring out the old machine, the thingy, and we put Henry Winkler's $5 in, and we decide to do it again. And Christine Arbalou, our script supervisor, wins. And I make a crack that, this isn't going to be a situation where we're all going to get pizza because Christine would never do that. Anyway, this is like more an apology than a correction because sure enough today, Christine got cookies for everybody. And I just wanted to make sure that's clear. And, I also want to point out that that might not have happened if I hadn't publicly shamed her. So, while everybody is thanking Christine, I think that, on behalf of everyone, thank you, Christine, but also, you're welcome. Last thing, we had a little, an ID. I mocked up an ID because it is 20 years in the building, and a couple things. One, so it was a picture of me as a kid, and I held it up, and we took a close-up, and a bunch of people said, it said NBC Universal on that, and that merger hadn't happened in 2001. And I'm like, okay. Did not realize you guys cared so much about that kind of thing. But the real feedback was a lot of you said, dude, you need a manicure. Your fingers are disgusting. For real. I talked about the prop budget, and people are like, you need a manicure budget. And it's true, I do chew my nails. I didn't always. I think I started around the first time we did corrections. Because I used to feel good about myself and what I did. And you remember the first time Shoemaker walked in, the night I was doing the first corrections, and I was working on it in my office, and he comes and he's like, "Oh, what's with the bloody hangnails?" As I was really working on it, I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you, Shoemaker." I said, "Legos instead of Lego bricks, and the whole world's coming down on me." But I do want to use this Olympic hiatus that we're about to go on to improve my situation. So I'm going to try to stop biting my nails, and maybe in a couple weeks we'll take a close-up again. Maybe I'll feel confident enough to show you where we're at. And I think it's important, because I think if this ends with me holding that Emmy, I want to have beautiful hands. I think that's about everything this week. Do enjoy our time away, and we'll see you after the Olympics.